Hey, welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about Instagram and whether or not we think it produces great content or if it is a dying platform. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really does help us out. Of course, we're trying to grow, and YouTube's a great place for watch content. So hit that like button so we can hit as many people as possible. So as an enthusiast, as many of you probably know, we try and consume watches every single day as much as possible, just because we are so fascinated and love watches so much. So there's different platforms that you can go to, Facebook, YouTube's a big one, especially because this video is on YouTube. There's some great YouTubers out there, obviously blogs like Hodinky, and we try to do a little bit of blogging as well. Snapchat to a certain extent, there are some watch enthusiasts who are on Snapchat. If you haven't seen them, it's fine. And then the big one is Instagram, and Instagram is a huge community within the watch world. Instagram has created such a huge watch community, and there are a lot of great known profiles that a lot of people follow. As an example, the first profile I actually got into was Mirko1704. He's a really He was the guy who kind of got me started into Instagram, and a lot of the watches that he posted early on were the watches that I kind of fell in love with. There's also, Hodinky, where they post some really great watch content. MBNF, of course, I have to give a shout out to my favorite watch brand. MBNF produces some great content as well, especially because their watches are a little bit different. And they also release some things about, historical references and where their watch inspiration comes from. There's also John Goldberger. If you're really into vintage watches, he has some really amazing vintage watches and tells some stories about them. And then there's also Philips watches, which releases content of watches that they have at upcoming auctions. You can find some very unique watches that they post and kind of keep up with the auction world industry. But Instagram is a great place for us to share our passion and comment with each other and basically cultivate this community where we can enjoy watches together. It's also a really great place to learn about watches. As an example, like I said, Philips is a great place. They often put a history of the watches that they're selling at auction, so you can really educate yourself about the world of horology through watches. Also, I have to say, Vacheron Constantin has a really great Instagram page called the Hour Lounge. This is probably one of my favorite Instagram pages out there right now. They basically post a bunch of their vintage watches and give you a history about those watches, because the history of Vacheron Constantin is a little bit guarded. It's not as well known as brands like Patek Philippe and Omega and Rolex. So they've kind of got into cultivating a community around their vintage watches, and it's a really great Instagram page, so check it out. It's called the Hourglass. Or the Hour Lounge, excuse me. But I have kind of noticed as I scroll through Instagram that it's become extremely mundane. You see the same pictures over and over again. I can kind of name on a hand, you'll see a Rolex Submariner, Omega Speedmaster, a Royal Oak, a Nautilus, and perhaps a Daytona in there. And it kind of just becomes the same watches over and over again. And the pictures really aren't that different. It's just of the dial or a bunch of them on someone's hand or something like that. So for me, it's become extremely mundane. However, I think there's ways that you can be completely unique in the watches you post. There are kind of two ways that I would bucket it. The first is that you can post a very unique watch. As an example, we did a review of the Schwarz Etienne Ode to the 70s watch. I'll put up a picture. This caught my eye immediately because I hadn't seen a watch like this on Instagram before. So it was a very unique watch, caught my eye, and I ended up reviewing it, and I'll put a link in the description of that review. Or you could have a unique background and that's the second bucket. You can have a unique watch or unique background, and that is kind of how a lot of people have created their profiles. Having a unique background means, being in nice places, or perhaps having a really interesting non-conforming background for your wrist shot, which is really cool. There are also cool ways where you can kind of move your wrist, but those are two ways that you can really have unique Instagram posts and not create this platform that's just very mundane and the same watches over and over again. Also, if you do things like the Hour Lounge does, where they give a history of the watches, that also helps to not create this dying platform of the same watches over and over again, which really kind of dries out after a while. But what's really cool about that is there are movements that have started from Instagram, from the Instagram watch community. As an example, as you probably know, the Speedy Tuesday watch, which was a limited edition Speedmaster from Omega, was released because there was a movement. Every Tuesday, everyone would post their Omega Speedmaster, and they would use the hashtag Speedy Tuesday, and a limited edition watch came out because of that. So there is some good that can come out of Instagram, and I think as long as we don't get stuck in a rut of posting the same stuff over and over again and continue to innovate our ideas within the watch community, Instagram can still be a place with great content that can allow us to enjoy this hobby and continue to enjoy this hobby, which is often a hard thing to do. But regardless to say, I'm a huge fan of Instagram. If you haven't seen our Instagram page, being that we're speaking of Instagram, it's at Life on the Wrist. Would love to connect with you guys and talk about watches. So I'll put our tag in this, and obviously our Instagram page is in the description as well. So just my thoughts on Instagram. I think it's still a great place, but we need to make sure that we're not becoming super mundane in the things that we post. And I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day.